Tribe for my research project by Jameson Matthews. Um, the background area, traditional cultural area. The Ho-Chunk originally lived in northeastern part of Wisconsin when they were discovered. Uh, where were they located? The Ho-Chunk tribe has been originally located in Wisconsin since the 1630s when they were discovered. They were believed to have lived in Green Bay and Winnebago area since they have gone southeast to their current location, which is towards the La Crosse area, which brings us into where are they located now. The Ho-Chunk are located mainly in Wisconsin in the southwest part of the state now. They have land in about 14 counties in Wisconsin and some in Illinois, but there are other clans, such as one that is located in Nebraska. Background, relevant culture, and history. What needs to be understood about culture and history to understand this issue? I believe that this is a very important piece because their whole culture is affected by this issue. Their language means a lot more than just being able to speak like their ancestors and their grandparents before them. Their language is how they continue the rituals and prayers that are in their religion. So they believe in their language very heavily. If they lose their language, they lose much more, which is why it is a big deal for them to try and bring it back. And lots of elders are trying to teach it in schools on reservations by teaching it to their grandkids as well and their kids by surrounding them with people who speak their language, such as older people and elders, to bring into their home to help teach these kids the language better and make it more effective for them. What is their cultural and history story? Their cultural and historic story background is the same as many Native American tribes. That is, their religion and rituals make up most of their beliefs. In order to continue to perform their rituals and religion, they must have people in the tribe who can speak the Ho-Chunk language. So therefore, it's very endangering that many Ho-Chunk speakers do not speak with their native tongue. Contemporary issue. Introduction to contemporary issue. The Ho-Chunk are trying to keep their language alive through youth education, but they're struggling to do so because the language is taught, but they don't offer credit for it. So it's hard for a lot of kids to take the class because if it costs money and they're not getting benefit from it, or it takes away a lot of their time, which they could use for other things such as schooling or working and things such as that. The language has been at a decline of people speaking it, and the tribe is hopeful that new efforts of targeting the youth can bring that back. Some tribe elders are also stepping in to help teach the kids the language of their ancestors to help keep it alive, and they're doing that through schools and stuff, and they'll host things for the youth because that's why they're targeting the youth, is so that hopefully the new generation of kids, they can start slowly building up the numbers and they'll continue to teach the kids below them, and hopefully that builds up more people that speak the Ho-Chunk language. Overview and summary of the issue. Not having many people left to speak Ho-Chunk is very concerning to their culture because if no one believes, they believe that if no one is able to speak the language anymore, that they can't live their way of life. The rituals and prayers are all done with their native tongue, making the language very endangering to their culture because if they can't speak the language, then they're unable to perform any of the rituals or beliefs that they have. Only around 50 to 200 Ho-Chunk natives left who can speak the language fluently, which is getting common for a lot of native languages that not many people can speak the language anymore. The boarding schools that would strip the language from the kids, I believe, is the main reason that this is now a contemporary issue for the tribe. And I just think that that's not okay, that the government did that, bringing them to the boarding schools, and I believe that's why it's at such a decline, because a huge generation of people just got their language and culture stripped from them, and it just hadn't been carried down throughout since, I believe. How the issue has gotten better or worse. The issue has so far been on a decline for lots of years, and members of the tribe today are trying to change that to make sure that their language does not go extinct. The plan that they have put into place to teach the youth the language, I believe, will slowly add to the amount of people able to speak the Ho-Chunk language. I believe that the elders are doing a good job of trying to teach the youth. And the map that I've put here to the right shows where the Ho-Chunk speakers are located, and that puts into perspective just how little speakers there are left today in the Ho-Chunk tribe, because you can see how big the Ho-Chunk part is on the map and how little people there are left that are able to speak it. How is this issue being addressed? The issue is being addressed by elders of the Ho-Chunk tribe and other members who have learned the language. Elders of the tribe are being able to teach at schools and things such as that, and they also try and contribute their own time to ensure that the language can continue to stay alive. Members of the Ho-Chunk tribe who also speak the language fluently are trying to teach their kids and surround them with speakers of the language to make sure that it is not forgotten. So, the kids will try and be around their grandparents more if they can speak the language, or they'll take them to conventions and stuff where people are speaking the Ho-Chunk language to try and surround them more and have them be more fluent with the language instead of speaking something else. What policies affect the issue? The Ho-Chunk were never required to speak the language of their ancestors, but this is part of the problem of why kids are not learning the language of their ancestors anymore. Education policies affect the issue because if the youth is not being taught the language, it is extremely hard for them to learn it, especially without the will to do so. And by the time that most of these kids realize how important the language is to them and how important it is to their community and their culture, I believe it'll be too late, and that's what has been happening for so many years. So by teaching the language in schools, I think it would greatly help the language issue in the future, because when kids learn a language when they're younger, it's statistically proven to be much easier for them, especially learning a second or third language and so on. What legal aspects, if any, are involved for this issue? There's not any legal aspects causing this issue to happen. There's also no legal issues preventing the language from going extinct in their communities. It's solely up to the current speakers of the language today to help teach the language to the youth and to others who are willing and wanting to learn. What basic principles of federal Indian policy are connected to the issue? There are no basic principles of federal Indian policy connected to the issue that I could find, mainly because the issue is about the language and not the land. However, I believe that stripping the native kids of their language in the boarding schools is a huge reason, and if not the main reason, as to why the amount of speakers of the language is so low today, because there was a big gap in the language because the kids would get sent off to the boarding schools, and there they would not let them speak their language or even talk about their culture. So I believe that generation, that's where most of the people stopped speaking the language, and ever since it has been at a decline, which is hurting a lot of native communities. Issue culture. How does the issue connect and relate to the culture of the tribal nation. This issue affects the nation's importance and relevance without practicing the language and history. The tribe's significance drops to the point where someday it'll be forgotten, and the members will be unable to perform the rituals and practice the religion that makes up their tribe, because if they can't speak the language, then it ruins all the rituals and religious aspects that they believe in. The language doesn't deserve to be forgotten and the culture to be lost, because they should be able to continue this down for generations to come and continue to show kids the way of life that they believe in. People who are born from the tribe have a right to know where they came from and how their ancestors lived. By not learning the language and practicing the culture, it strips the history from kids and generations to come, eventually leading the tribe and the ancestors to be forgotten and unimportant, which is why members of the community who can speak the language fluently are desperately trying to teach it to the youth, and parents are trying to teach their kids because it is so important to their culture. Issues, perspectives, and understanding. What are native and non-native perspectives on the issue? This issue is way more important to native people than non-native people because of how it affects natives' culture. Non-natives are not really affected by this contemporary issue, and it's really sad to me because non-native people are people who started this, I believe, through the boarding schools, and they were the reason that these kids got stripped of their language and their culture altogether. Reflection. How does seeing these perspectives affect your understanding of the issue? It affects my understanding of the issue by showing me how the language means to the culture and community of the Ho-Chunk people. They seem to have a good plan in place to teach the youth and the language, to keep their language alive so that they can continue to teach generations to come the religious and beliefs that they have. Everything I've found in my research helps me understand the issue much better, because to most people, losing like a language is not that big of a deal because they have something else to fall on, and that they can, as long as they can communicate through another language. And throughout my research, I've just found that that's not the case because of how much more the language means. It is not just communication through one another. Speaking the American language, they can do that just fine, but with the native language, it's much more. It includes their religion and their culture and all their beliefs. Overall, how has learning about this impacted your perception of the issue? Learning about the language has impacted me a lot, and has impacted them, and it has drastically changed my perception of the issue. It has shown me why the language is so important to them and what it really means to the tribe. Overall, I've learned a lot about this issue, and I'm glad that they're slowly starting to put things in place to try and overcome the issue and to make it better so that they don't have this issue in the future. These are my sources, and thank you. That's it.